Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. As I've spoken many times, I have talked about the problems with race-based education and the problems of forced equity. This whole idea that if this one has this, then I've got to give it to this person just as much, simply because they are there. They exist. It's this whole idea with equity-based housing and things like that. It's a simple idea that those that take different paths in life, everybody takes different paths. Okay, we're not faulting anybody for that. But imagine, here's the thing. Imagine you've grown up poor your whole life. Keep being poor. And then you worked hard. Let's just say you grew up in what we'll call it the ghetto. All right, low income, impoverished area. And let's say you worked hard to get out of that. You know what struggle is, okay? And you worked very hard to move from low income to be able to say one day buy yourself a $250,000, $300,000 house, okay? We're going to go upwards and even say $500,000. And let's say you had people around you in a similar situation, just as yours, okay? The same as yourself. And they didn't work. They didn't do anything. They didn't take the path that you took. You know? For example, I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's going to upset people, but you know what? Let's do it anyway. You decided to go to work. You decided to go to school. You decided to wait till you were married and had yourself situated before you started having children. Okay? And you work hard and you achieve and you get yours. Then the government comes along and says, well, that guy who didn't do any of that, decided to start having children out of wedlock and didn't wait till he was situated to be able to take care of or even raise a family, just said, fuck it, I'm gonna just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And did not strive to improve their station in life such as you have. The government says that, well, we're going to give him everything that you have, just the same. And the reasoning is just because he didn't work, just because he didn't do things to achieve for himself or take his own life serious, does not mean he doesn't deserve to have what you have. You worked hard and moved out of the ghetto. And because you both were in the ghetto, he should also have the same thing as you. It's that kind of mentality that ends up causing people to not work as hard, not do as much as they could. It stifles innovation. It stifles progress. Why should you work your fingers to the bone, blood, sweat, and tears, knowing that someone else doesn't have to, and they get all the same rewards as you? This is the same kind of thing we find with this equitable employment type stuff. They say one person works 60, 70 hours a week to show that they deserve to move up in the company, to show that they are worth more money. So they put in the extra time, the extra hours, the extra work. Somebody else in the same position as yourself, say they only, I don't know, work 20 hours a week, work 30 hours a week even. Say you get a raise from 15 all the way up to 20. Well, that person's going to get a raise all the way up from 15 to 20 as well. Why? Because you work in the same position. You do the same job. you only do more of it and do it better, but that's the whole idea. And this is what leads me to this whole notion of what I'm going with, which is back to what we were talking about many times before, is this idea of forced equity in education. And see, because their idea of equity is not to try and raise people up to the level of the highest around them, but no, it's to bring everyone else to a lower level so that those that aren't working as hard don't feel as bad, because that's what it really boils down to. We don't want those that aren't working as hard to not feel bad. Now, it's easy to think that, okay, I must be talking about the children, but I'm not really talking about the children. It's actually more about the teachers, because the teachers don't want to feel as bad because they are failing. And let's be honest with ourselves, they are failing in ways that just should not even be allowed to exist. I'd say a lot of it stems from maybe far stretch here, but a little bit because I ran to a lot of people through these programs, but the Teach for America. Don't get me wrong, it is a great idea. It gets us more teachers, but I think there needs to be more screening because a lot of these people are terrible. They're reading from the game plan that's given to them that they have to teach, and they are failing at that. When you see man on the street videos and you see people asking people around the nation basic questions that they should know as an American citizen, just basic questions that you should know as an American citizen, such as the name of the president. And you find that they don't have these answers. They don't know these answers for some reason. And some of them are striving and working to be teachers. Many of them going for primary education. Get them at the early stage. Give them the building blocks to go into the future. Only problem is these building blocks are incomplete because those that are teaching it are incomplete. There's been a decline in the quality of teachers in the United States. This is very obvious. This is apparent. And if you are a parent, it is apparent to you. I mean, it's really absolutely terrible. I mean, it's easy for people to forget years ago when you had many districts, not super lot, but there was many districts against the Sylvan Learning Academies, and there were many other actual independent learning academies that school districts throughout the United States were trying to have shut down, or force them to only teach children what the public school system is teaching them. Because here's the problem. Studies found that children that were attending these learning centers were putting out higher grades, better averages than the children that weren't. These independent tutoring academies, where they took the time to actually focus on education, such as math, reading, science, history, where they focused on that, not teaching children some gender ideology. You're supposed to be teaching math. We found that when the teachers are actually teaching the subjects, the students that were going to these academies were actually doing better. So the teachers wanted to have them shut down. Why? Because they were making them look bad. This is not really just a speculation, but this is what came out from quite a few teachers' unions. And since they were making them look bad, they were losing funding. Why? Because they're not putting out quality education. People were mad when they came up with the plan to penalize teachers for children having low grades constantly because the quality of education across the United States was going down. They fought against that because they should not be penalized for not doing their job. Now, this is not to say that teachers in general are bad. There are many fine, amazing, wonderful teachers in this nation, and I applaud them and I praise them for doing an amazing job. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some bad apples in that batch. Such as what we talked about with Oregon and those counties, changing Asian students to being white students because the education gap that they were trying to tout, saying that there was racism in the education, wasn't there. So they switched an entire race of people to be considered white people on paperwork so that it made it look like there was a huge gap between white people and African American and minority Latinos in education. And the Asian parents were rightfully upset by this. That is insulting. That in itself is racism. You had, at the time, before the pandemic and such, op-eds coming about from hospitals and nursing groups about how the standards of nursing must be changed in the testing because we need to allow more minorities. I'm sorry, I don't think that the qualifications for being a nurse need to be lowered. If you can't make it, you can't make it. Doesn't matter what race you are. There are plenty of white people, Asians and whatnot, and Latinos that don't make it, and that's fine. It's not for them. This comes the same down to, I want to say it was California law board that had stated that, well, there aren't enough minorities. As lawyers, we need to lower the grading standards and the testing for qualifications to be an attorney. And again, there are many Asian, white, Latino, and other races that don't make it. And that's okay. It's not for them. Not everything is for everyone. I don't understand why that is so hard for people to grasp that concept. Not everybody is going to be a brain surgeon. Not everybody is going to be a heart surgeon. Not everyone is going to be a mechanic. Not everybody is going to be a horticulturalist. We can't all be rocket scientists. It's just not for everybody. Some people are not that great at math, but they can paint you a masterpiece painting, the likes of which have never been seen. Okay? There are people that are not that great at reading. It's okay. That person could probably play and write you the most beautiful song you've never heard. They could probably cook you a meal that would make you sing to the heavens. There are people that are great at math, but could burn water. Yeah. There are people that read so exquisitely and you listen to them and it's just like an angel speaking. It's just, to hear people, when you hear somebody read Shakespeare and read it correctly, it just moves you. Okay? But that person probably couldn't even figure out how to change the oil. There are some people who have to take their cars to get them looked at. It's just not for them. Not everything is for everyone. And it's okay. That is okay. Everybody's different. People should be allowed to be different. Trying to homogenize everything is only going to be the destruction of your society. When people are allowed to grow and make their own decisions and progress freely wonderful things can happen. Yes, people are going to fall to the wayside. That is going to happen. We understand that. And a lot of that is based on their own personal choices. And for many, it happens because of circumstances that they can't control. It's out of their control. That happens. And when we see that happening, we should take the effort to assist those people. And if they choose not to help themselves, well, I mean, as they say, you can only lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So let's get to the important part of all this. There was a school district, and this school district is the Oak Park and River Forest High School in Michigan. And I want to break down what's been happening with them, because they want to bring race-based equitable grading to their schools. This is garbage. This is crap. We've explained this and talked about it many a times. So I'm pretty sure everybody's already aware, well, aside from the rant I just did, that is absolutely poppycock and should not be done. But what I'm going to start with is the response, because an article about it in the West Cook News came out, and the school district, they had a response. And that's what I want to start with. I want to start with the response because I want to start with their lie. We're going to go backwards from this one. We're going to start with their lie because they are absolutely lying. And this should be making everybody aware by listening to this. But it also should make everybody wary about them, because it's not just them. It's happening in places around the nation, as I've talked about before. You know, even going as far back as to point out that California wants to do racist things on the idea of it being good and equitable. This is not me exaggerating. This is literally what they said. They tried to actually make it a law. They even stated when they tried to pass it that we want to be able to discriminate on the behalf of people that we want to discriminate for. And want to put discrimination into the books. Why? Because they think that, well, if we discriminate against certain groups of people, other groups of people will be able to get ahead. Literally, this is what they said. But I want to read this statement to you, and this is literally came out today. This is why I want to start with this one. So, it's a statement regarding grading practices. It has come to the district's attention that a recent article in the online West Cook News inaccurately states that at the Board of Education's May 26th meeting, Oak Park and River Forest High School announced that it will implement a race-based grading system in the 2022-2023 school year. This is not true. OPRFHS does not, nor has it ever had a plan to grade any student differently based on race. The article contains a variety of misleading and inaccurate statements. The article's mischaracterization of the board meeting is unfortunate and has caused unnecessary confusion. I'm going to read this next paragraph. As part of the Board of Education strategic plan, the OPRFHS Grading and Assessment Committee was formed to examine national research on objective, unbiased practices for determining whether students have mastered academic content. As the Board of Education May 26 meeting, the administration's representative to the OPRFHS Grading and Assessment Committee provided an initial report that included a progress update on the committee's examination of grading practices. At no time were any statements made recommending that OPRF implement a race-based grading approach. Okay. So, you heard that. According to the school district, they have no plans and in no way have had any plans for race-based grading. So, next I want to go Because I want to break this down, and when I get to the end of this, it should make every parent upset. And if you are in this region, I really hope this makes you upset. And if you have children going to this school, I hope this really pisses you off, and you talk to them peacefully, mind you. Peacefully, always peacefully. But it's very important that parents talk to the schools, find out what they're telling your children, find out what they're teaching your children. It's very, very, very important. Children they're malleable. Their brains are like sponges and they're taking it all in. And they look to authority figures, because they are the authority figures, to help them to understand the world that they're growing into. So it's best to be aware of what the adults that have access to your children for most of the day are telling them. We've already seen it with the Zoom calls over this pandemic nonsense, where teachers were telling children things that they were telling them, don't tell your parents. And again, as I've said before, who the hell are you? Why are you? What are you? And what makes you think you have any authority to tell my child statements that they can't tell me? That child lives in my house. I am responsible for that child. Anything you tell to that child, I need to be privy to. It is not your child. You do not pay these bills. You do not raise this child. When the child goes to the hospital, you do not pay those bills. So anything you say to my child, you shall say to me. Otherwise, we have a problem. And one of us has got to go. And it's not going to be me. You might find yourself on a bread line. And that's the reality. That's what should have happened to many of these teachers. As soon as they became aware that what they were doing, they should have been removed from their positions. No school district should have backed any teacher that was telling things to children that they wanted them to keep secret from the parents. And that should be obvious. It should be absolutely obvious. People say oh, you have nothing to worry about. Bull crap. But let's get to this article in the West Cook News. OPRF, this is to implement race-based grading system in 2022-23 school year. Oak Park and River Forest High School administrators will require teachers next school year to adjust their classroom grading scales to account for the skin color or ethnicity of its students. School board members discussed a plan called Transformative Education, Professional Development, and Grading at a meeting on May 26, presented by Assistant Superintendent for Student Learning Lori Fiorenza. In an effort to equalize test scores among racial groups, OPRF will order its teachers to exclude from their grading assessments variables it says disproportionately hurt the grades of black students. Again, this is what I'm coming down to. It's always, again, every time I talk about this stuff, it's always the same thing. Every time I read one of these articles, every time I bring up what one of these school districts or one of these offices said, it's always, well, what about the black people? There's races of every race in the United States is oh my gosh. Well, they may as well be the United States, but every race of the entire planet, aside from what we say indigenous people, some indigenous tribes that have not left their villages, but for the most part, every race is represented in the United States. It's one of the most diverse places in the world. But the only people that seem to be unable to figure out how to function according to these idiots are black people. It's always black people. We can't, like I said in Oregon, we have to suspend integrate testing, and because black people, we have to lower the education because black people. This is the most racist nonsense. And I do not know why people keep going for it. This is the problem of the liberals that I keep talking about. They are speaking for an entire group of people and have no idea what they are talking about. I mean, let me continue. They can no longer be docked for missing class, misbehaving in school, or failing to turn in their assignments according to the plan. Again, let me keep going. traditional grading practices perpetuate inequities and intensify the opportunity gap. This is what I was talking about last year with the report from the Smithsonian Museum, the African American Smithsonian History Museum, where they said these things are white supremacist, or rather white culture or anything like that, and these practices need to be broke, such as showing up to work on time, completing your work, wait until you're married to have children. Yeah. You want your children to sleep in separate bedrooms? Oh, that's akin to whiteness. Literally, they had a whole list of this nonsense, and basically what it was telling to African American people is all the things that you need to do to educate, to survive, to be able to be successful and prosperous in this world. You should not do them because white people do them. White people show up to work on time. Apparently Asians don't show up to work on time. Mexicans. I mean, again, this always comes down to one race, and you would think that people would have gotten wise to this nonsense and said, hey, I mean, come on, you're insulting. No, this is the most racist shit ever. But it calls for what OPRF leaders describe as competency-based grading, eliminating zeros from the grade book, encouraging and rewarding growth over time. No, teach my kid how to read. If he is failing, I need to be aware. If he is failing, you need to do your job. If your job is to teach him to read and he's not reading, well, somebody is not doing what they're supposed to. Now, I can handle the kid. I can deal with that at home. But you need to be doing your job in the classroom. Why is my child failing in math? I sent him to you to educate him. You're with him throughout the course of the day. Why is he having trouble adding 2 plus 2? These are the same people that said 2 plus 2 can equal 5 because of black people. Yeah. You're no longer wrong if you say that. I don't understand what is going through these people's mind. And so this is what the article said. So now we understand that part. But they're saying that's not happening. But before I get to the nail in the coffin, I want to bring something up about the school district, because this is not their first time doing some dumb nonsense like this. Again, this whole racial nonsense that they keep trying to sell on people to get behind it. Because like I said before, it's this whole idea, well, we threw black people in the mix with it. And so as long as we say that, people will have to go along with it, because if they don't go along with it, we can call them a bigot and racist and a white supremacist. Well, what if they're black? Well, they're still a white supremacist. What if they're Asian? White supremacist. What if they're from Ecuador? That's a white supremacist too. What if they just got here from Cuba, escaping communist regime, and they're Cuban as F? Well, if they disagree with us, they're a white supremacist. What if they don't speak any English? White supremacist. What if they're from Kenya? What if they're like straight fresh off the boat African and they disagree with you? White supremacist. That's literally the view of the left. So, all right, let's read this real quick. This is the moment for OPRF. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I just want to give you an idea of how far their lies go. So for too long, Oak Park and River Forest High School, like secondary schools across the country, has restricted access to advanced courses to a select group of students. This has led black and, I'm going to say Latino, because they can take that Latinx nonsense and shove it. It's Latino and Latina. This is another problem I'm having with white people, white liberals. attempting to tell Latinos what the language has to be. Again, well, we, living in Silicon Valley find that the Latino and Latina of the language very sexist. We don't approve of it. And we don't care. It's Latino. It's Latina. You can take that Latinx. I know they say Latinx, but that's nonsense. You can take that Latinx nonsense and, I don't know, throw it in the dustbin? Maybe. But let's continue. This has led Black and Latino students to be underrepresented in advanced coursework at OPRF, which in turn denies them high-level preparation for their lives after high school. This initial decision is made when a student is 14 years old in their freshman year of high school. We've all been through this. Many of us have been in the AP classes. They're actually really good classes. And this decision, whether a student enrolls in honors or not, affects their access to educational opportunities throughout their lives. I mean, it's on a grading scale. You know what I mean? And it's testing in for them. So, I mean, if you don't pass the test and you don't get in, you don't get in. I mean, that's the whole point. It assesses where your level's at. You might get in honors classes. You might get in AP. You might do better in the regular course. I mean, there were many people in our advanced classes that did not make it some left after the first month. And that's okay. Like I said before, it's not for everybody. So the OPRF school board is about to vote on whether to allow all freshman students access to the honors curriculum by detracting most freshman classes. This is not a rush decision. So basically they're saying we have to get rid of the protocols to figure it out and just throw them all into the mix and hinder the education of the people that are supposed to be in this class and actually make it harder for the people that shouldn't be in this class to actually be properly educated because we're moving at a level that's either going to be too far advanced for them or we're going to slow it down, which is going to more likely be the case. We're going to slow it down. Now, this comes back to my whole point of saying they're lying and they're not doing their job, because here is the reality. The reality of Oak Park, okay? This is the reality of that school district. The reality of it is it's only 22.9% white. It's 1.1% Asian. 2 or more races, 4.2%. White, non-Hispanic, or Latino, 22.8%. Okay? Black or African American, 69%. 69%. Now that tells me that a majority of the students at these schools are African American. So if they're not getting into the advanced classes, then it is clearly the fault of the teachers. Because there are some problems at home that might need to be fixed for some of those children, and we should do that because everybody deserves a good education. But they're saying that, well, our minority students aren't getting into the programs. Your minority students are a majority of your students. So if they're not getting into the program, that means you're not educating them up to that point to actually be able to enter the program. That means that your primary schools, leading all the way up to their secondary school education when they're freshmen, 14 years old, that means for the first 13 years of their life, you have failed as a teacher and didn't do your job properly. I bring that up because it's important. And on this last note, this is where we're going to close it out with. We're going to we have the Oak Park, okay? We have the Oak Park, River Forest High School District Strategic Plan Priority 2, Transformative Education, Professional Development and Grading. This is from that meeting, May 26, which they say they didn't talk about these things. It didn't happen. Throughout 2022-23 school year, OPR-FHS will implement a professional development plan that is comprehensive and differentiated to support the needs of all teachers and the learning of all students. Strategy 3. By fall of 2023, consistently integrate equitable assessment and grading practices into all academic and elective courses, i.e. the things that they said they didn't say, the things that they didn't do, or the things that they say they're not planning on doing. Let's jump all the way down to the bottom. We're running a little long, I know, but I have to make sure that you have all this. As it says, we're going to look at grading and assessment. During the 2020-2021 school year, a team of teachers and administrators read and discussed 5 texts, including Grading for Equity, Get, Set, Go, Pointless, What We Know About Grading, and On Your Mark. We'll have to have a look at those because I have a feeling they're probably more nonsense. During 2021-22 school year, utilize the text Get, Set, Go by Thomas Guski to continue discussions. Panel discussions. 3 students shared their experience with grading and assessment while at OPR-FHS. They probably talked about how they couldn't do the work, and probably didn't do the work, and made up some nonsense. I know I'm stretching it there. I have no idea what they said, okay? That was a joke. It was a joke. Okay? Collaborative team leaders recently participated in a learning opportunity with Dr. Douglas Reeves. Oh boy. And discussed grading with equity and shared practical issues. Summary of the findings. Traditional grading practices perpetuate inequities and intensify the opportunity gap. Integrating equitable assessment and grading practices into all academic and elective courses requires the collaborative effort of a team of educators committed to improvements that benefit all students. Many OPR-FHS teachers are successfully exploring and implementing more equitable grading practices, such as utilizing aspects of competency-based grading, eliminating zeros from the grade book, and rewarding and encouraging growth over time. Let's see. The next steps. All right, this is Oak Park and River Forest High School administration and faculty will examine grading and reporting practices in academic and elective courses utilizing evidence-backed research and the racial equity analysis tool. Repeat that, the racial equity analysis tool. The examination and reflection of practices will require that the OPR-FHS administration and faculty clearly define the following: the purpose for grading and the proficiency. Oak Park and River Forest High School will establish a philosophy of grading that reflects a rigorous, meaningful, and evidence-based process by which student learning is understood. So basically, long story short, reading the meeting notes, we're finding that everything that they said in their response to the West Cook News article didn't happen, actually happened. I would love to be able to read the minutes of that meeting. We're going to have to look into seeing if we can get a hold of that. But yeah, this is getting ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, I hope parents are really just sticking it out. Keep your head up and just be aware, you know, and step in when you have to. That's all we can do. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I thank you for tuning in. And we'll catch you next time.